Good morning. Yeah, really early morning.
It is early. My hair is wet.
My name is Jeff Fritz. Welcome back. Welcome back to my live stream. We're here at Channel 9 Studios. It looks like I'm back at my office, but we're actually at Channel 9. And I'm here with Kathleen Dollar. Good morning.
Good morning,
Really
Jeff.
early morning.
Really early, yes.
Because we're on the West Coast and it's 7 a.m. And it's, it's been a quick night for me, right? We did the .NET Conf attendee party last night, and now we're back. And gosh, we've been writing code and presenting together and doing all kinds of things for a while. Yeah,
a long time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So today is, what day is today?
Thursday.
Thursday.
September 13th.
It's what, the 13th.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of .NET Conf, so we're actually going to lead right into .NET Conf.
Yes.
That's going to be really cool because we've got some great presentations this morning from the other studio over there, right? And it's kind of weird seeing that I'm in my home, but we're not in my home. That's kind of funny. But I wanted to talk to you about the idea of legacy code, right?
Yeah.
And I understand you did a keynote a couple days ago, last week or so, and you talked a little bit about maintaining projects, what is legacy code, and I think some of the projects that we're working on stream here, they're not, we've only been working on it for a few months, but by the definition of legacy code, I think they're legacy now.
By my definition,
Okay.
they are.
Go ahead.
But I want to explain why I use the definition that I do, which is that I think that when you look at code, you look at it in a lot of different ways. But one of the ways you approach code is that a brand new code, blank sheet of paper, you've got big ideas, you're putting things together, you're going from the big to the small and the small to the big, and that's what's going on, and you're basically making a sketch on a blank piece of paper.
Okay.
Once you get to a certain point, which I'll just call production, but even sometimes before production, but it's easy, I'd say everything after production for sure, some before production, then it really resembles more you're filling in a crossword puzzle when you're making changes. There's a very definite shape to it, and you're approaching it to make important changes, okay? What you're doing is not less important, it's probably more important, but you're doing it within the confines of what's already there.
Okay.
You're poking the edges, you're fixing things, but it's not this what do I want to do, soup to nuts.
You don't have an open blank canvas. Now you've got, you're confined a little bit. Okay.
Right, and so your skill set is different. And we talk all the time about the skill sets that we need, the knowledge that we need for when we come to that blank sheet of canvas and we're trying to figure out how to do that, what should it look like thing.
Right.
So when instead you're coming up, and I know a lot of people think legacy code means bad code, and I just don't accept that as a definition, but when you come up and you're working that direction, anybody already just say, Kathleen's wrong. But when you're coming up with that perspective of, hey, I'm going to make a change to something that's already there. So first, testing becomes absolutely critical, regression test, and there are some ways you can slide regression tests into what's already there. And debugging becomes a very important part of what you're doing, because even if you're not fixing a bug, and I would think it's, again, a waste of time to try to define a bug as something that went wrong.
Sure.
But you're making a change, okay, which means you have to go into the existing code, prove out the current behavior, make sure you know the behavior that you want, find where to make that change, or changes, make those changes and prove that you did it right.
And just the fact that you're changing something alone introduces risk.
Well, there's always risk, and the thing that I think that we want to do in looking at really better attitudes as part of it around legacy code is to take that risk and make it more manageable, more boxable, because when you say, oh, I have no idea what Jeff's going to do to my code, but it's broken right now, so I'm just going to let him go. That's risky, okay?
Yeah.
But if you say instead, Kathleen's going to work on the code. No, I'm just kidding. But
now it's more risky.
If instead you're looking at, okay, what's my test boundaries to help keep me safe? What is my deployment strategy? Whatever that strategy is, I have a very clear strategy, and hopefully I'm automated on that so that I can get from my change to production. And so and then on top of all that, you've got refactoring. So the three skills that I think are way under thought about, talked about, underappreciated.
Yeah.
There are not enough conference talks on it. Are adding tests to existing code.
Yes.
Debugging, and refactoring.
So, well, let me look at the chat room here.
Yeah,
It looks like our friend Smab says he spent many, many years maintaining legacy code. You know what? There's so much legacy code out there. It's a good entry point for a lot of folks in our industry.
It's all the code there is almost. If all the code in production is legacy code, it's all legacy code. Your bank,
Yes.
Your bank, okay.
Yes.
Your kids' school records, your medical records, your car. So
oh my gosh.
you trust your life to legacy code.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess it ought to work. So we do all that, and then we don't have this huge respect for the people that are doing that work. And obviously, per line of code, there's less people. But there should be a lot more people working on legacy code because it's like 99% of what's out there is legacy code.
And look at this. Arts Plunge, VB6 rules. You know what? For its time, VB6, Visual Basic 6, brought rapid application development to the masses.
It is. VB6 was a fantastic tool, and it was a magic tool in its time. There had been some things coming before, but it democratized programming.
Yes.
And a lot of people, I was already a programmer at that point, although I'm not university trained. I had used some other things, Clipper and some other things, but I saw a lot of people coming into the industry. I knew somebody who owned a pet shop. I knew a Hollywood Grip, which is the guy who builds the set and does all the weird stuff. And I knew all sorts of people back in the day that were doing it part-time with VB6. And now it's hard enough that it's hard to be part-time anymore. And I still think VB6 is the gold standard we want to get back to.
But I think...
So yes, VB6 rules. We just, not today, sorry.
But I think...
It will roll again, but not exactly.
The word that you used there that I think is the catching point is it was a great tool.
Yeah.
As a language, it had some shortcomings.
Well, I think even as a tool, it had shortcomings. I mean, the very fact that we needed Dan Appleman's book, is so... I love Dan dearly, but back in the day, he wrote a book that was how to talk to the Windows API because, well, sometimes you had to. And so I think that there's been a lot of efforts to get back to that VB6 bar, that magic, we can just do it kind of a bar, not just in our world, in other worlds as well. And I don't think we're quite there yet.
Which book was it? I'm just
what
trying
was
to find
it?
it.
The Windows 32 API?
Developing
API?
COM
Wouldn't be
ActiveX.
138. No. It was an API.
Visual
book.
Basic Programmer's Guide to the Win32 API.
That was it.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
It's still on Amazon from 1999.
I bet it is. So that means he still gets a check every once in a while. I love it.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
So our friend Sequel Mr. Magoo in the chat room says he still maintains VB6. With a name like Mr. Magoo, I'm not surprised you're maintaining it.
No. The problem now with VB6 is that it's kind of way out of support. And for those of you that are maintaining it, I'm going to give a guess that you've got a VM in an old operating system. Because while VB6 will run in the newer operating systems, you can put it in production in a newer one. You can't do the developing in the newer operating systems is pretty challenging. Oh my gosh, I forgot his name. There's a name, and it might come back to me. There's a guy who did a blog post on it, though. If you need to try to do VB6 development in like 1.7 or something, 1.7, 1.8, I think he wrote the blog post for 1.7. I requested that he do it, and then like 3 weeks later, he came back to me, and it was like a 5-page blog post. It was like, it scared me to death. So anyway, I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name. He's one of the big guys in legacy code, and if I think of it, I will let you know.
And who is it? Shmuley says here, if I look back, I believe he said once code is written, it's legacy. I think at the point that it ships to production, it's legacy.
Well, this is why I said sometimes before, because that's a space that it kind of depends on the way you do development. If you throw it over a wall to testing, absolutely, it's absolutely at that point. It's legacy because you're coming back to it 2 days later. If you're in a continuous deployment crazy one-day cycle where you do your changes and it goes to production immediately, well, you go to production pretty quick. But I think that's just kind of that whole space there is a little gray. There's times when you're still like, oh, I'll just rip this whole thing out and throw it away and start over. And that's another part that's different with legacy code is that you don't want to rewrite. That's bad, okay?
Yeah.
It's just blatantly bad. So you want to refactor, but stepwise tiny refactors to make code better is different than saying, I know what this method does. Good luck. I know what this method does. I'll rewrite it. And sometimes if you truly know everyone who calls it and you truly know everything, that can be okay. But you have to be very careful when you're changing the algorithm and rewriting a big block of code. And there's a time during development after you've written the code that's perfectly okay to do. You want to do that.
Sure.
You're still trying out ideas in a bigger way.
And
so I think that there's some truth to what you say when you say as soon as it's written. But I do think that there's this fluffy area in there between I'm off of that blank sheet of paper. I have real code. So yes, it's on, it's real code. But I haven't released production yet.
But now, Art, I see some folks here saying that they have a virtual machine running XP. Mr. Magoo has one. Art's Plunge is saying had to develop VB6 under Windows 10. Seems to work, crashes from time to time. That's
so you got Visual Studio like back in the day running on Windows 10? I did not know you could do that.
Visual Studio 6.
Visual Studio 6 on Windows 10? Go teams. I don't think that works on Windows 7. Okay, just saying. So I'm really impressed with Windows 10. Whatever they did to make that work, that is fantastic news for those folks that are doing that, maintaining that old legacy code. I do have to point out it's not really in support anymore. So
well, and I think Stealth Hacker makes exactly that point. Please don't keep unsupported stuff in production. It's bad from a security standpoint. Yes,
it is dangerous from a security standpoint, and this is the thing when we keep. I do believe in backwards compatibility, and I believe it is not Microsoft's job to tell a business that they need to spend $100,000 or $3 million to rewrite their software because the world changed. The world did change, though, and we're not in the same world we were when we wrote VB6. It's not a safer world, and so I do think that looking at how you look at your security situation there, and if you are, if it's something that's if you have any personally identifiable information, PII. If you have any PII, you should absolutely get off VB6. But if you're, I don't think every website in the world has to come off of VB6. Some of them just really have a fairly low bar. I would go to HTTPS on any.
Oh my gosh, yes. I think our friend Barry Dorans would have a cow if we weren't on.
Yeah, so those VB6 apps aren't on the web though. They're desktop apps.
They're intranet apps.
Yeah. They're right.
To your point about refactoring, and that's a good practice, OneSev says after 4 sprints, do a refactor sprint. It's nice, but it's hard to sell to management. How does that feel as a practice?
Yeah, I think management should stay out of the dev shop because there's things that devs. I have personally worked with very few devs, and they've easily been come into the fold. Devs want to get the job done. They want to get the big picture job done. And making their life easier in the long run is an important part of that. And so I do believe that managers who come in and tell devs you can't pair, you can't mob, you can't do refactor sprints, you can't write tests, all that is just BS. That's what Jeff said I had to say.
Yeah.
He told me I had to watch my mouth here.
We try to be family friendly.
Family friendly, okay. So at any rate, I do think that's baloney, and
okay.
I do think that we should continue to turn the crank on educating management on the fact that if they don't trust their devs, they have a different problem, and they should solve that problem.
Yeah.
And if they trust their devs, now if you have a bunch of young devs that aren't producing for you, and you're doing, you brought in new devs to do a rewrite because you want to keep the devs you've had on the existing system, and they're not producing, you can get devs. There are devs in the world that you shouldn't trust. I'm not saying you should trust all devs. That would be silly. But I think most shops, and if you've worked with people for any length of time, managers should trust devs, and if they say refactor sprint every 4 sprints is going to make us go faster in the long run, I'd sit down and ask why and get a deeper understanding of the fact that we do throw code out to get things done, and we do have to go back and look at that and say, does this look the way we want it to look in 5 years? Because as we look at legacy code overall, one of the changes that I would like to see in the way we think about it is that when we focus on that blank piece of paper, we focus on the new stuff.
Yes.
If we start focusing on the old stuff, then we'll embrace our actual reality, which is codeless for a very long time. There's code that's out there They wasn't supposed to live for 5 years. It's living for 5 years and might make 10.
Right. I mean, this was the point of Y2K, right? We had code from the 70s that was around to the year 2000, and they weren't expecting it to be around for 30 years.
And not only that, they absolutely weren't expected to be around for 30 years. And there was no way to predict, and we still have no way to predict, what kind of big changes are going to happen in the next 30 years.
Yes.
That's a long time.
Yes.
So if you were to look at computers, you would have expected, 1970s computers, you would have expected improving, UIs, but we already had screens by the mid-70s, and you would have expected better languages because there'd just been this flurry of languages, although it kind of there was flurries there. And then you would have expected faster CPU and a little bit faster, better memory, but you wouldn't have really predicted that you'd get to the point that 2 bytes of memory, you never thought about it. It just wasn't a conversation. Now, the funny thing is that we've come back around to thinking about that. There's a conversation in the API review about whether or not the core framework, .NET Core, should support a floating point that's half size.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's called half, and so that's saying 2 bytes matter.
Right.
But in terms of data storage, it just doesn't matter, and that wasn't predictable. So
data storage is so plentiful. It's like, who cares, right?
Yeah. Not for that. Not for 2 extra bytes in a date. Yeah. So nobody cares.
I mean, the fact that you can get how many gigabytes on a micro SD chip, right? That's smaller than your thumbnail. You would never consider that back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What else do we have?
So there was a comment earlier. I want to make sure I went back to that. Shmuley said that your quote about management should stay out of development. That feels can you get it in writing? I think that's a sticker.
Sure, I'm happy to.
That's a sticker we need to make.
We should do a blog post on that. I mean, I should do a whole blog series on that because I do believe in trusting developers. I've been a manager. I mean, you know that. A lot of people wouldn't know that. But that's I was director of engineering for a small software company, and I've done various other management roles. But it's all about empowering people, and when that's in developers, I think honestly, if I was running McDonald's, I don't know if empowering I
the
don't
fry
know.
guy.
I don't know. I just don't know. I haven't done it.
Oh no.
Maybe it would be. Maybe I would be just as much empowering those people to do the right thing. But for developers, you just can't successfully micromanage developers. You have to trust them.
Yes, you do. Right. You're paying smart people. They should be doing the right thing.
And if you don't trust them, step back and figure out what deeper is wrong and get that fixed. And sometimes you're in an organization that's just so toxic and difficult that you're going to be pushing a rock uphill. But, yeah, what else do we have?
Well, Brave Cobra, I think, makes that point beautifully. Good creative people don't need management. Steve Jobs said that in the 80s.
Yeah, I think the dudes need some management.
Guidance, I would say.
Yes.
Right?
And
they need that light post, that lighthouse. This is where you need to go.
Right.
Keep them on track. Let them do their thing.
Yeah, I've seen a great little cartoon which has 4 quadrants, and it's a different word for guidance, but I can't think of what it is. And so basically the idea is you're trying to build a bridge, and you're either going to tell somebody, do exactly this, even though it doesn't turn out to be a good idea, or you don't even tell them you want a bridge, or you say, we need to get to the other side, figure out how to do it. There's various different ways that you can, levels of guidance and authorization that you can give somebody to get things done.
Right, there's this, right?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Right? Right, this is how the customer explained it, and it's a swing with 3 seats. How the project leader understood it, and it's a swing that's in the middle of the tree. How the analyst designed it, and there's actually a space in the tree. How the programmer wrote it, it's all wrapped around the tree, funny. How the business consultant described it, and it's got a nice comfy chair. The project was documented, and there's nothing. Of course there's nothing. It's actually over here, right there. Now, what operations installed, and there's no seat. The customer was billed for, of course, a roller coaster. It was supported as a tree stump, and the customer just wanted a tire.
Yeah.
That is so true.
And there does need to be, I think that the whole communication between customers and developers does vary. It varies a lot. I think it's really ineffective when you have a situation that the developers can't talk to the customers directly. They have to go through somebody else. But on the other hand, if you have customers that are talking all the time directly, developers, and driving them directly, then you don't have a filter that recognizes the overall business strategy as opposed to that individual customer. So there's different ways. And companies generally that are successful have got that solved one way or the other, which is important. What else? Where are we going?
Let me see here. They're saying my stream title is wrong.
Oh.
Let me take a quick look. I thought I updated it here. 1 second. I thought we updated. Let's click that. There we go. You want that image, Shmuley? Yeah, I just Googled for it. I binged for it. I DuckDuckGo'd for it. And yeah, the developer swing. So, all right. I forgot to click update information over there. That's what happened. So, yes, let's see. Developers occasionally need reality checks. I guess that can apply to everyone. Absolutely, including management. They need reality checks. My gosh.
Well,
right? That's kind of the point of the pivot, right?
Yeah. You just reminded me, I better get my phone turned down. It's like my phone's going to go off here. My brother is going to call me, and he doesn't know that I'm
that we're doing a thing.
I'm doing a thing, yeah, I didn't tell him.
So regarding legacy code, maintaining some things. Now, we've been working on this project on stream called CoreWiki, right? We've been trying to teach and learn how to write an ASP.NET Core app. We've been growing it, and we finally deployed to production about a week ago.
Okay.
And it's sitting out there at corewiki.info. So by your definition, it's now legacy code.
And probably, given that kind of slow development and the fact that it was, you've got this part finished and you're working on this part, parts of it will probably effectively, which should be treated like legacy code from quite a ways back.
Yeah, yeah. And Binary Logics is saying, make sure to follow Fritz. They really want that rainbow beard. Yes, sure, go ahead. Click the follow button. We'd really appreciate it. I know it's become a comment around Microsoft, yeah, let's see you really do that, Fritz. Come on, you're not really doing that.
He's really doing it.
I'm going to.
You guys do it, he's gonna
Absolutely.
Do it, so,
Look, I stood by my word that we made the donation to Girl Develop It for all of our supporters here. I'm absolutely right there. The rainbow beard, we will do it. So I want to take a look at CoreWiki. We got a pull request a couple days ago from our friend Chris about introducing style cop to keep code clean, neat, and tidy. Now, I hear people refer to this type of pull request as the resharper, right? It's somebody ran resharper and they're committing the code saying, hey, look, I made your code better.
Well, they could do that, or they could use the code formatting features we've got now in Visual Studio. Either way. And I actually, I like that what Visual Studio is doing, and there's nothing against ReSharper. It's just there's some things I think are logical in the box, and they've worked with the community to get an EditorConfig that is more extensive than the original .EditorConfig format was, and I think that there's a couple of aspects of this. But we want to do this?
So we want to take a look at this. Talk about what's good about these changes, and then make a decision about whether to accept this,
right? Or
if we need to make some changes and then accept it, or if we should just reject it.
So one of the problems in this kind of open source project, where other people are going to be working on it, if it's an internal project, this is going to be easier. Is that the ideal way to do that is to establish what your rules are, whatever tool you're using to get your rules, establish your rules, and then do a single checkout over a weekend preferably when everyone else's code can be, let everybody know, get access to the full code, do this massive change because it touches every file. That's the problem.
171 files changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so as long as you know that everything done in that pull request was done via a automated refactoring. If you find a bug in automated refactoring, that's a big deal these days. Okay, so a few years ago, sometimes they'd screw up, but I think it's pretty reliable now.
Okay.
So you wind up with, you check it out, you do 171 files, everything's changed, but you don't actually review it because you trust your tools.
Yes.
And you trust, I mean, if you're in production in a high-risk situation, okay, do something else to validate that you're still good. I mean, you know, I wouldn't do a continuous deployment straight out with 171 files without a little bit of thought. But for this one, I think that the problem is that you have a bunch of people that have, have clones and forks and all local, and they're doing their work, and you're going to touch their files, and you are almost certainly going to create a just hotbed, huge sea of people that are having to do
merge nightmares,
right? And people that you're trying to work with on a really positive basis. And so, you know, it's really a stick in the eye to anybody. So if you're running an open source project, at the very least, do this once. You know, get it right. So,
so where you mentioned EditorConfig, I think we should look at the EditorConfig tools in Visual Studio, right? EditorConfig is a way for us to define style, right? Yeah. Not naming style so much.
Yes, naming style.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
But it's a
super important part of it.
But it's not EditorConfig wasn't a Microsoft thing, right?
So the editor config that was in the world, okay, was pretty minimal. What I know it had was tabs or spaces and indent size.
Tabs, of course.
Spaces, of course. Oh, I'm so disappointed in you, Jeff.
Oh.
Okay, so.
Gonna blow that up.
Okay.
All right.
So it was small, and then Microsoft worked with the community to expand it quite a bit.
Okay.
And so I assume that editors that don't understand what Visual Studio means by some of this stuff, that are it's language based, you know, C# and VB, then it's just going to ignore those things.
Right.
Okay.
And Meat Popsicle says both spaces and tabs. Yeah, do that in VI.
Lovely. Lovely.
Look at this. We're already arguing spaces, tabs. We went a whole show one time arguing over spaces and tabs.
Okay, let's not do that.
2, 4, 8 spaces. Which one?
So one of the things that I hope we get to as a world, but we're not quite there yet, is a world where those things, which are just super like who cares stuff,
yes,
can be read specific instead of write specific.
Yes.
So we're still write specific. So I would love to see a world where a few things, and spaces, indent spaces being one of them, front of the line and indent, which can have no other use. That just happens on check-in.
Yes.
You have 8, I have 2, nobody cares. We never know.
Right.
And that's a good world until we do live share and I start trying to deal with your 8 spaces.
A colleague I used to work with, in all of his stored procedure code, it was 8 spaces. And it was so that he had enough space when he tabbed after typing from on the next line, the table name was indented from the word from. So all of his code then ended up being really wide that he put into the database.
Well, we just keep getting wider monitors, so it's all good, right?
Absolutely. Love the widescreen.
Yeah.
All right. So.
But not for code review. Actually, seriously, guys, don't make wide lines in code.
No.
Because it's not pretty.
It's
not pretty
difficult.
in a lot of the review tools.
No. So Chris, and Chris is in the chat room. I saw him comment there, and he tried to stay close to what we were doing inside of EditorConfig, but he introduced style cop. Let's click on the first commit here. And, I mean, there's already in this first commit, there's changes from one commit. There's how many files in here? You know, just about all the files are touched. But introduced style cop. I forget the name of the style cop config file. Is it? Stylecop.rules.ruleset was introduced in this project file. Stylecop analyzers. Oh yeah, Stylecop JSON.
So if Chris is out there, I just want to give you a chance. Is there anything in particular that Stylecop gave you that you checked for and couldn't do in Visual Studio?
That's a good question.
Because
well, these are analyzers, right? That he brought in.
Right, Stylecop yeah, I'm not. I think I may just be disconnecting with the name StyleCop right now. So
Thinking of the older tool.
well, there's the FX Cop tool, and there was some. I'm first. Is this a third party or one of the names for what Microsoft has done? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And then the rules. Microsoft just had different ways to do rules.
Don't say them.
What they want for what for how to actually do the rules. The reason for that is that if everyone has the same rules, then they can more easily be enforced prior to check-in in the future.
Yep.
All right, so StockUp is the name apparently for one of the ways Microsoft has done things. Microsoft has evolved this story. I haven't actually worked directly on this, so I don't get to take any credit, but I think I can explain most of what they've done.
You mean blame? No, kidding.
No. I think it's awesome. So in Visuals, do most folks work in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code on this?
We've seen a little bit of both.
Okay.
So,
well, why don't we, just the Visual Studio experience is that you have on your machine the ability to set boatloads of details on style. So you can say that all your interfaces need to start with a capital I. You can say that you should use Pascal case for all of your fields.
Yeah.
You know, you can, whatever you want. You want to say that you should start your fields with an underscore grade. Okay, that you can. All those rules are fine. So also rules about where your braces go and whether you put spaces around equal signs and all those stupid things that no human should ever have to comment on in a pull request. And that's kind of the point here of everybody doing kind of the same thing, and EditorConfig, which is moving towards being not just Visual Studio. I can't remember where we are with Visual Studio Code, but we hope that it will be pretty universal across the way that Microsoft helps you edit. We can't help beyond that. That's just not our, we can't do that. But EditorConfig goes with the project. So all of those rules that you could make for yourself, you can now attach to the project. Or the solution. It's a hierarchical thing, so you can put it at the root of your repo, and then it's very easy. It comes down, and so if you're using an editor that recognizes it and works with it, then all you have to do is have your code formatted before you check it in, and the whole project stays in the same formatting pattern. And I know, by the way, I know ReSharper does great, both styles and other analyzers, and they do still do a couple of things that Visual Studio doesn't do just yet. And I'm not trying to tell people not to use ReSharper, but a lot of these rules are things that you just really never want a human to have to look at. And so making that automatic where it's on most people's, it's on their machines.
In their editor.
It's in their editor,
Yeah.
and as,
Right, and EditorConfig is an open source. It's a community tool that other editors, right, Sublime and Brackets, and they support using EditorConfig to help format your code. There's the extensions that we've added specific to .NET. They don't support because they're taking the standard types of content.
They could support, and the whole point of doing that was because. It was important in the big picture design of this feature that it wasn't you setting Microsoft settings. It's your code. It's your editor config. It needs to be a pattern, and I don't believe that the JetBrains editors like Rider have picked it up yet, but I certainly hope they do, because the purpose for the design is, and if somebody knows that Rider supports editor config, the new features. It is a little newish. It's the last year or two, so they may be intending to do that, not quite there yet. But will Sublime ever will it ever fully understand the way you do your braces? I hope so.
It'd be nice.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because there's braces in other languages too, and braces, curly, whether you put your brace on the next line, it'd be great if they supported that.
So, absolutely. All right, so let's actually grab Chris's code here.
All right.
Let's bring it in, and then should we do a little live share so we can take a look
Well,
at
I
the code?
just see my live share is I had to install live share on this machine, and I'm not sure where I'm at on that. So let's just see. My install is complete. So can I confess that I've never actually done live share? I'm sorry.
Stop right there.
I'm a PM. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're going to have fun with this.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Okay,
So
I am in Visual Studio.
You're in. So we have some conflicts that we're going to need to resolve in so many files.
Yeah, that's going to be your major problem. And so this is why there's two ways to do this. One is you say, all right, we're gonna embrace Chris's work and we're gonna bring it in, and then I'll tell you something we're talking about that I think is in the last most. What version are you running? I'm just checking what I've got.
I am the Visual Studio version.
Yeah, what Visual Studio version?
I am running all the Visual Studios, the best Visual Studios. 15.8 Preview 1.1. I'm running an older version of the Preview.
I was going to say that is not the most recent because 15.8 is out the door, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. Okay. So
I'm not normally using this machine.
No, the reason I'm asking, the reason that this is, I'm asking you about this is because if you go through this merge conflict, and then we have we have some time here where we practice merge conflicts, okay, which is not a waste of time. If you're an open source project, you may choose to do this, to take a big PR like that and then just fight through it yourself instead of putting in the editor config on a clean version and just saying you're going to just have to give everybody else the merge conflicts. Either way, everybody but Chris has the merge conflicts. Okay.
Yes.
So we're only helping Chris here. Okay. But then there's AI-based work that it's pretty preliminary, and so I expect it to get better. But we can look. There's a tool. I haven't used it yet, but I understand it's in there that looks at your code and says, oh, this is the right editor config rules. This is what you have an opinion on. And I don't yet know if it's not opinionated enough or too opinionated, because like if you do things 3 different ways, is it just going to give up and say you didn't care, or is it going to pick one? I just don't know that yet, because it's a brand new thing. But
sure.
that will help open source people if they want to take somebody from the outside and then build the editor config from that. Or if you've got some code that you've got in your team that's already pretty good, you've got that one project that's better than the others. But as an aside, this is where editor config gets really, really good, is if you've got a team and the team works on 3 or 4 different projects and they're all in a different state of embracing consistency. So you've got the project that's from 5 years ago where you didn't have any tools and it was just And then you've got the one that you started last week where you already knew what you wanted in your editor config and you have a setup ready to go, or you're fully committed to ReSharp or whatever it is that's doing we've got it. So you've got this range of different
sure.
levels of intensity of this is how we do it. Well, you can respect that on a project-by-project basis with editor config. So if you go back and you say the only thing we cared about was tabs and spaces, then you can do that. And if you say we care about every single name, then you can do that as well.
So, and right, editor config is enforced hierarchically.
Yes.
Hierarchical.
I'm going to let you do this.
Hierarchically.
All right.
I think we got it.
Okay.
So, right, we've got. I have my editor config in this project on the root of
the root of the repo.
The root of the solution, right?
Which is probably the root. It's your repo root. Yeah. The weird thing is that it doesn't have to be, and we run into this in various things in .NET Core, CLI, and SDK, which is one things I work on. Is that we don't actually know where your repo root is with any confidence. It sure would be good if we did, but we don't know. So editor config can be, and then, so if you have something, so you have a particular project that has a special rule, and so there's something it has an opinion on.
Yes.
Well, once it gets an opinion, it stops for that question. Okay, but then it doesn't have an opinion on something else, so it goes up to editor config, and editor config doesn't have an opinion. Then it falls back to your settings as a user, which has a default.
In Visual Studio.
In Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code doesn't really have those kind of same.
Those settings.
I don't know that it does. I haven't been writing enough code lately, Jeff.
We'll fix that. All right. Go over here. Make sure I have that ready. All right. So I've done the get, and the merge looks really ugly here. I'm looking at a 98 conflict. That's
So you understand my comment about the. So seriously, on your own teams, for your own team, seriously, check it. Tell everybody to check their work in.
Yeah.
Tell them to go home. This doesn't take long. It takes an hour, but then fix it all. Have everybody check out again. And we'll have no merge conflicts.
Right.
Because these are stupid, ugly merge conflicts.
Look, 3,800 lines removed, 4,100 lines added. Look at it right there. So, yeah.
So we could test different merge tools. I mean, this is it really, yeah.
Okay.
Boy, I hate to ever say you did this work, Chris, and I don't know whether we should actually merge.
Let's take a look. Let's take
a
look, right?
Hey, I heard a rumor that Visual Studio Code was a good merge conflict resolution tool.
I think it is.
All right.
I think merging dev into the branch would have been easier. Maybe. Well, no, that would be merging dev into Chris's branch.
Ultimately, I think you get the same. I think it lets you solve this off of your main, out of your main world, which is very good. Okay. But I don't know that it gives you less merge conflicts. If somebody really believes it's going to give us less merge conflicts, let's go. But I don't think it'll reduce the count.
Yeah. And SMAP makes a very good point. Do we actually agree with the rules being applied? Well,
yeah, see?
Let's take a look at what rules are in there, and then we'll take a look.
That's why this AI tool is actually going to be, once it, like, people think it works, it's going to be totally awesome because you can't argue anymore. It's just like, well, our code already says.
Yeah. So, well, actually, Shmuley is kind of pointing at a direction here that might be a way to go. Maybe we don't do the style refactoring in all of the files. Maybe we just bring in the tools, the style cop rules and tools, and then apply it.
So you could do that.
Don't pull in Chris's changes to the files, but pull in the tools that he's suggesting.
Right. Which is all just another way to say, we're going to create a merge conflict problem for everybody in the universe except Chris or even Chris.
And once I've got it fixed, me, it'll be fixed for me as well.
Yeah, so this is just a giant problem. Well, another thing you can do, which is a little bit sane, is to take a look at what rules you actually care about and see if there's some that have a light touch. So, for example, there's people that feel quite strongly that even one-line conditionals, and if you don't throw things.
All right, hang on. One-line conditionals. That's when I use the question mark operator with the colon.
No, that's actually not what I meant, but that's another one people can have disagreements about. The one I meant is if you have an if statement and there's only one you have an if statement, and inside the brackets you only have one line.
We've got a code editor in front of us.
We do?
Let's actually show that.
Okay. So you could just open your project and find an if statement, and
exactly.
then it would be obvious what I'm saying.
Here we go. IntelliCode package. That's fine. It's a preview version here. Let's zoom in just a smidge.
Good, because otherwise I'm going to have to get it up over here because my eyes were not good enough to see where it was, right?
So I'm already seeing red lines here because I've got merge conflicts in some of these files. We'll get to that.
Right.
So
you're going to have a total chaos right now.
Right. So let's find an if statement real quick.
Shouldn't be too hard.
Should be a few. Right. So here I've got things like
pattern matching helps us drop those out.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so if you just look at what's inside one of those blocks, I can't see the line numbers, but like the one in the middle of the screen, it's got 3 lines in it. And if that just had 1 line, then the curly brackets would be optional.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so there's people that feel quite strongly that the curly brackets should always be included no matter what. And that was extremely good advice before we had formatting that would indent it in a way you could see it. But still, I understand that people feel strongly about that, and I don't have any problem saying that's a rule that we want our project to follow. And if that's a rule you want to follow, that's the kind of thing that's going to have a lighter touch.
Yes.
It's not going to break every freaking file. See how good I've been with that?
And Binary Logics agrees. Brackets are not optional.
Yeah, okay, brackets are not optional. I'm not trying to start a war here, but that's a light touch, and it's something that is going to, it can affect the actual outcome of the code. The reason that brackets, that people feel strongly on this, is that you can overlook the way that you can just add a new line of code and you actually have an ordering dependency and you can just create a lot of chaos. So the brackets actually have a broader impact than just the way your code looks like. Although I want to say that the way your code looks is super important.
Yes,
so as
absolutely.
we look at legacy code, and there's the notion of ugly code with legacy code, one of the things that we really want to do is make that code not ugly.
Right,
and
because
as much as possible, because it does help your reading and comprehension of code. That's where the problem is. That's the hard part.
You don't know who the next person is who is going to maintain your code. It could be a psycho killer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
After I build a TARDIS, let's just replace all the loops with goto. Now cut that out. Come on now.
All right.
So let's take a look at some of the things here. Let's go find the style cop rules and look at what's being suggested.
Right.
Let's start there.
Right.
And then go forward. So
okay.
Here I see a style cop JSON here in this project. I think there's a top level one running around somewhere. There's got to be, in order for us to be able to reference it. I see style cop JSON here. It's being shared across projects. Okay, good. And then style cop rules. The file does not conform to the rule set schema. There's a duplicate key sequence, blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. Let's see if I can open that with, let's find a text editor. I want a text editor. I'll choose that one.
Unfortunately, and I just had to look this up so I could get a little bit more up to date. I feel like the new formatting stuff pretty much supersedes
Style cop.
Style cop.
Okay, but the editor config stuff doesn't get enforced during build.
Sure it does.
It does?
Of course. It can.
In Visual Studio it does, but not on the command line or by my continuous integration.
Somebody might be working on that.
Somebody might be working on that.
I wouldn't be able to. I'm not sure.
My. Okay.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. Somebody.
I think we've been open about the fact that we want, we want that.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
I think Casey has mentioned it.
Yeah.
At other events. It said there was
has she mentioned it at other events?
I think
Good.
she has.
Yeah. I'm not in trouble. So yeah.
Yet.
No, your formatting is your formatting. It shouldn't matter what tool somebody uses to edit with. And so the idea of the reason we want it in the command line build is so that somebody can be using Sublime and they can you still know that they're good to go and they know they're good to go before you ever wind up trying to check in. Nobody wants to check in with stupid problems.
No.
I hope.
So 1724 it said was duplicated. CA 1724. 1724. There it is. It's there twice. How'd that happen? Probably because of a merge. Now save that. Close this. Try and open it again. Hey, look at that. Style cop rule set. Okay. So,
I wish I knew better how Style Cop does relate to the new editor stuff.
So, I'm looking for the things that are checked here, and types get own disposable fields should be disposable. Declare event handlers correctly. Right, that's an error. Oh dear Lord, there's so many rules here, and I'm skipping right past so many of them. Do not hide base class methods. Yeah, I kind of agree with that one. Move p invokes to native methods class. That kind of makes sense. Auto layout types should not be com visible. The whole com visible thing, I don't think we really care about here. Let's see.
So
Style Cop has the advantage that it will work with older Visual Studios. Yeah.
True.
Okay,
that is true. And I just found a blog which is it's submain, blog.submain.com.
Okay.
Stylecop-detailed-guide if you want to bring it up. And I'm not familiar with this except I it gave me
It was
better blog.submain.com/stockhop-detailed-guide.
Detailed?
Yes. Stockhop-detailed guide. Peter Morlin, did you get this?
There
Yep,
we go.
there
StyleCop,
it
a detailed
So-
guide to starting and using it.
If you scroll down to below where it says what is StyleCop, it says a little word about old and new StyleCop. StyleCop used to be a VS plugin, and you can still use it that way through a NuGet package. Although with Visual Studio 17, the current recommended way is the Roslyn-based analyzers, which is why I was kind of not putting them together, is that they have sort of evolved together. But that's a really good point, that prior to 2017, then the EditorConfig stuff isn't going to work.
Isn't available.
So you have to make a call on that. What I don't know is, I mean, there should be like a way to convert them, but I don't know that there is.
EditorConfig can't, is that Vistizin says, EditorConfig can't require line break after brackets. StyleCop can't. Public method before private methods. So I still use StyleCop until EditorConfig catches up. That's fair.
Have you submitted those as issues? Because those ought to get fixed. Those both sound extremely fixable and
Or feature requests, right?
Well, whatever feature, just
It's where
complain,
would
please. That should happen.
Where would folks request that?
If you're using Visual Studio, the what do we call Send a Smile now? The feedback button, and we're evolving that.
The send feedback button, the little person up here with the thought bubble, provide a suggestion.
Provide a suggestion, right there.
And it jumps you right into Visual Studio user voice. You can enter an idea here, and off you go.
Right.
So.
Right. That would be totally awesome because that team is working really hard trying to get a full featured everything you want from all the things people have ever thought about into the EditorConfig and Roslyn Analyzer story. And Roslyn Analyzers, by the way, are really good because they run as part of the build process anyway, and so they're already in this super high performance thinking, and the folks inside Microsoft that are writing them are super aware and careful about how to do them without destroying your performance. And so it is a somewhat different tree that gets built than what ReSharper builds. So ReSharper can do still a couple of things that I don't remember what they are, honestly. I really don't know. But they have to do a complete separate tree load, and so the Roslyn analyzers avoid that because it's already an extension of the build you're already doing.
So I'm seeing the analyzers in the notifications project here, but I don't see them in some of the other projects here. Now, before we go too much further, I'd like to clear up some of these red underlines that we have on the project files.
You think?
Just so we can get the project loaded before we start trying to pull these things apart. And the one that I have a problem with to start here is our web project itself is unavailable, which tells me there is a merge issue somewhere in here. And looking in the scroll bar here, if I look a little bit further down, I've got a little red spot here because I've got a merge conflict. So Microsoft Web Library Manager build 10163. I moved that by accident. Microsoft Web Library Manager build 10163. Not sure why it rejected that, but Noda time was upgraded to 2.4 from 2.3. I'm going to keep the 2.4 version, I think, and get rid of that.
Although I will say that this is just a gentle comment on this type of pull request. If you wind up working with somebody and you're going to do a formatted based pull request on someone's project or your own project, do nothing else. Nothing.
Yes, yes.
Nothing.
Only.
You should be completely comfortable with them 100% saying, take the new without looking at it.
Yeah.
Don't do anything.
It's just formatting.
And changing note of time is something. So, yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if that was changed since Chris made his pull request.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Well, that's why, again,
On the other side.
The best way to do this is coordinated. Check it out, do it, check it in. Like an hour, super quick. The more you can do that, the better, with no changes in your development branch in the meantime.
So that fixed this project. Let me go take a look at the solution file. We're going to have to unload the solution to edit the solution file, right? Where is it? Right, because I don't see edit solution file here. Why do I have the red line, right? Oh, unable to find project information, right? I've got, yeah, this is a, so I feel like I need to close the solution, right, and then reopen just the solution file.
Yeah, I use Notepad here.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Let's do this. No. C, not code, C, dev. Oh, wait a sec. Yes, let's use code. Because code doesn't care.
Okay, that seems
right?
totally reasonable, yes.
So if I do code here and open ye old Visual Studio Code, don't change formatting in the same commits that you do features defect fixes. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Yes. And that's what people want to do. They go into I mean, it's actually a completely different strategy you can take, which is to say you never fix it unless you're in the file anyway, and then you just mess the whole file up. And if that works for your team, great, but it still means that you're in a file with something that needs to be checked, that is a feature change or something else that does need to be checked on code review. And making code review easy is one of the things we're in this cycle. It's and we go through. I've been in this business forever, and there's different things that get attention, and we roll through different things with attention. And this is really the first time I think we've hit code review in a way that's going to really bring us out with people actually doing it and being successful with it, because making it easy is like the number one thing. Not being nice, also be nice, okay?
Sure.
But it used to always be, oh, you need to be nice in your code review. It doesn't keep it from taking boatloads of time. And, this is going to be good round, making all the stupid stuff go away.
And I think binary logics makes exactly your point. Whoever has to code review that will hate you.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to say,
and you blew it!
Yeah.
So, is there any way to do this in small increments? Do you think Jay Wood has a good question there?
Well, that's where you get into don't do it on any file except when you're in there for something else, and then do it. And if you've got a small team, you could even say, look, I'm in this file right now. I'm going to do 2 commits. The first commit is going to be a formatting commit. I'm going to, I've got this file. I'm going to do a formatting commit on it. I'm going to get that commit done, okay, so that we can look at these separately. And actually probably, maybe even check it in, but nobody else is in that file right now. And then I'm going to do the work I was going to do in that file. And then that can be separately reviewed. So you can do it that way. And if you're in a team where you feel like that's the right thing to do, another time that might be good is a team where you feel like we're not quite set on our rules yet. And so we might be doing this for a long time, and we need a way to get into a rhythm where for the next, maybe 6 months or a year, we're going to just be picking away at this problem. And if you feel like that's what you're going to be doing anyway because you just can't get your editor config right, then you can do that. But it's just I'm checking this file out to work on it. Our habit is the first thing I do is a commit of the formatting, so that gets done, and then I can get a PR out on that, and then get a second PR out on the changes you're actually going to make.
The functional changes.
And that way way hopefully nobody else was in that file. If you're in a team where people work in different parts of the app, then you can do that.
Okay.
And that way you're not annoyed.
Yes.
Because you're trying to change this code and you want to fix the formatting. And you really, 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 really want to fix the formatting.
Oh yeah.
And that's when that's when people wind up fixing formatting. And people do it all the time, and it makes code review too hard.
Now, maintaining a solution file is only slightly painful.
Only slightly,
because I'm seeing things like, right, the GUIDs here, right? These project GUIDs are exactly the same, and that makes me wonder, right? Because then you got this whole thing, and it's, what the heck is that?
Yeah, I'm not feeling like terribly much like taking the keyboard for you on this from this whole
thank you.
This whole merge conflict thing. I'm like, I'll watch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not very optimistic on this. I will tell you, I'm not optimistic on this merge.
Okay.
My guess is that you're going to spend some length of time looking at this before you decide this is just not going to make sense to do.
Yeah.
And it's a problem. And I do think your project and most open source projects should find a strategy and a way to do it in the right way at the right time. But I'm not convinced it's today, right now, without planning. I think it's awesome, Chris, that brought it up, and it needs to get done. But I do think this is kind of a deep change to a project that needs some planning and making sure you get the right rules ahead of time so you don't do it twice and stuff like that.
So I see Brave Cobra commenting on quality. We're pushing our normal rate out. We've got an excellent connection out to Twitch. So we're good on our side. Chris, who submitted the pull request, says a potential third option being super proactive to have this decided up front and agreed prior to the project.
Please.
Oh, yes.
Oh, please. If you can, I'm coming from a legacy code way of thinking. If you have that blank piece of paper early on, and if you are going to argue about it, if you're in Visual Studio 2017 and you create a new editor config, you have two options, which was brilliant that they gave you two options. One is an empty editor config, which includes a link to where you can find more information about, what should you put in this file?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And the other is it's called .NET. It's because we'll just give you what we're trying to use, and you can, you can use what we use because then you don't have to argue. And so, really, if you have people arguing now about formatting stuff,
yeah, it's a little bit late in the game.
Please, I hope not. But there may be some small things you do. But spaces around operators and for C#, curly brackets at the beginning of a new line. For JavaScript, curly brackets on the old, and that kind of stuff is pretty common.
Our friend Kevin Griffin says our policy on internal projects is merge conflicts need to be resolved by the person who opened the PR. That's not bad. You own the pain of making it work for everybody else.
Right, and that's when you take your development branch and merge it into your own branch first, and you have to resolve everything there. And then when you go back, it should be an easy merge. And that's actually a fantastic idea. When you're doing open source, sometimes you don't want to be quite that pushy with people. There was another one there I saw that was interesting. I think he's suggesting that we blow off. You just get to reset the solution and just carry on. Yeah. Although he might have just meant the solution file, he might not actually want us to give up on the entire PR right now. But I mean, this is just really, it really is. It's a really super challenging problem. Sure. Especially for projects like you can imagine on .NET Core right now, we have to pretty much just say, Rosalind, 4 million lines of code. Yeah, we just don't do this. We just don't take changes like this because we can't.
Sure. Yeah. I think there was a comment earlier where they were suggesting that, let's put the style rules in, but set them all to warnings. So that it doesn't block you, but it gives you that gentle nudge, hey, while you're in this file, do this little bit of cleanup. So then you take the one step at a time, one or two files that you're improving as you're working.
And that's great if you have a habit of doing it a separate PR on it. Sure. But if you go in and you're making a feature change and you're fixing warnings at the same time, you're in exactly you're
now
still
we're back to what you were saying earlier.
You're still in this space where you're making your code review hard. Okay. And code reviews, to do them well, they have to know what was changed and why it was changed, and they need to be in and out. They need to not be super involved. And if you're trying to figure out, let's see, that line just changed the spacing, and that line did this other, and you can get some diffs that ignore white space. So you resorted usings. Did you add a using? Do we have unused? That kind of stuff gets really messy in a code review. And so I do agree that the warnings are super important. especially if you can get your rules established up front. They should absolutely be, I mean, they shouldn't be information. They should be warnings.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing them as errors because I think that the point is get your code working, and if you need to hack around, fine. You know, it's when you check in that's when we want it ready to go. And there's a lot of things on that, testing and other things. It's just like there's a point that you're like, we're ready to go, and we're ready for code review, and that includes making it pretty and for new code for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing we should back off on this. There's so much change here that
I don't think we'll finish in the time we have left today.
No.
And so
let's back out of this, and maybe we'll take a look at another pull request.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Yeah.
So,
in the meantime, while you're doing that, there's something I want to talk to you about. Can you work and listen?
of course I can.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
What's that?
So our friend Mr. Magoo has just gifted 5 subscriptions to folks that are viewing in the chat room.
Oh, fantastic. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, that is
so
fantastic.
Bill Cron, Mordecai Zuber, Cassio1, Abe Pearl, and Poster Ho, congratulations. You just got a Tier 1 subscription from Mr. Magoo. And I don't know if you know this, I match all of our subscriptions.
All right.
All right. So and we take that combined dollar figure, and we make a contribution. You know, from Mr. Magoo and from myself, we make that contribution to Girl Develop It, so they help women, underserved minorities, folks that want to learn how to code. They give them an opportunity to learn how to code and get into our industry.
Right. Right.
I think it's a tremendous organization. Thank you so much, Mr. Magoo, for that kind gift to some of our friends here in that are watching right now on stream. That's great. Thank you so much.
Right. That's
and
great.
Yeah.
Super.
Let me finish doing that reset.
Okay, so while you're doing that reset, I want to say something else about kind of a general way I look at legacy code, which is that, we're really talking about the code assets of a company, and or open source is a little tiny bit different, but we're still talking about code assets, and I think it's good to have a clear understanding of one of 3 buckets that your code assets, each one goes into. And that might be per project or per application, just depending on how things go. And one bucket is, this is important to us and we're going to keep it running. And so you're going to stay on top of some new changes. You're going to at some point you're going to do this formatting thing at the right time. So you're going to make it look good. You're going to be aware of technology changes, and you might be looking, for example, at going to .NET Core for a project that's not there right now for that. You might be in that process of thinking about that. And so that first bucket is, we still want this running in 5 years. And developers love to rewrite, and we fail miserably bad at it all the time. And this is the bucket business should put things in. And I really hope we get a better job of teaching managers, like when they're learning to be managers, about how to shepherd this super important asset they've got and keep things in this bucket as long as possible. So that's one bucket. Now, and because it allows business change, okay, that's why that bucket's important. It's not just technology change, but business change. But you can, long-term security and stuff too. The second bucket is this is important to our business, where we need this code, but it never changes, and it doesn't have
it's
business.
A plant. It sits in the corner and it does its thing.
Yeah. And so you're going to have to work on it sometime, but you don't need to work on it all that often. So on that code, you do figure that eventually technology might munch it to a point you have to think about it. But right now, you can just sit on existing technology and everything's good. And so, obviously today, .NET Core Framework, you wouldn't be looking at .NET Core on those projects, okay?
Sure.
Because they're fine. They're going to keep running.
They don't need to change.
They're going to keep running.
They're plants.
Fine, right.
Plants.
We have plants. Can you see our plants?
No,
they can't see our
green
plants.
screen, sorry.
There's plants here. Okay. So the third bucket is stuff that is gotten problematic. And it gets problematic. Technology change, it can get problematic because of business change. I hope everybody's aware of GDPR at this point, which is the European privacy standard.
So GDPR, that's the European privacy that everybody had to have enforced by, May
1st. Yeah. So hopefully you're on top of that. If you have any EU access by EU citizens, I believe that's the way it works, but I'm not a lawyer, so don't ask me GDPR questions. But that, there can be big business changes. Obviously, Y2K was a moment of that, where you look at your code and you say, hey, is it the right thing to do to keep this code alive? And I would say, Silverlight, sad faces, and tears. Silverlight would be in that bucket. VB6, again, tears, very sad, might be in that bucket. Things that they're just old and out of support, and they're just out there enough that you're like, yeah, we're going to have to eventually rewrite this. And the thing there is that you want to try to get realistic budgets in as early as possible. This is a business question. You're talking about a lot of money. And so trying to keep business people from sticking their head in the sand about those applications and their eventual need to move to more modern stuff. And then when you do go, you do have that blank sheet of paper, and you are going to write as modularly as possible and rip things off as much as possible. And maybe at that point you can also look at how you're going to save and then migrate a database as a separate operation and some things like that. You might go to the cloud, you might not. There's lots of decisions you're going to make, but that third bucket is the one. It's kind of your problem children. And if it's not going to be dangerous, you can just leave it there. Who's laughing?
Oh my gosh!
What?
So our friend Kevin now has just gifted 5 more subscriptions. You guys do like spending my money here.
Now, if that's Kevin Griffin, hi.
That is Kevin Griffin. That's our friend Kevin. So
I know Kevin.
So Fretya, Zirius, Wardora Set, Death by Chipmunk, and Kulu83. Congratulations. You've all now got subscriptions to the channel here. You're going to get a little black coffee mug next to your name. You get to use the .NET bot emote everywhere on Twitch. I hope you hang out a little bit later today and you tune in to .NET Conf. While you're over on .NET Conf, folks will be giving presentations, including one
today.
Kathleen dollar. That's tomorrow. But it's as part of our 24-hour stream. Jump into the stream there make sure you jump into the .NET Conf streams. Use your .NET bot emotes to share that with some of our friends. And thank you, the Simeon, for subscribing as well. Like I said, we'll match all of those and we'll make a great donation to our friends at Girl Developers.
Thank you very much, yes.
That's so great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So these are good management business decisions that folks need to go in and discuss. I'm reading here. Arts Plunge says, as I mentioned on an earlier comment, having legacy code also involves making things like installation disks for third-party controls. License codes are also safely stored, backed up and backed up again. Oh my gosh. This
is so true because there's it's like a hierarchy of need, and I'd have to go look up where I did this, but I did it for the keynote. And the first one is you can build. It's like if you can't build, you're told to start with. That's number one, which is why I mentioned the VB6 and your operating system, and some people on the XPVMs and that kind of thing. So you have a level of need, and the first one is, man, you've got to be able to build the thing, and that means you have to. It also means you have to not only keep your license code stored, you have to stay aware of what your legal ramifications are for using some of that stuff. Make sure that you're paid up where you need to be paid up, and you're doing things on that. It's like the baseline. That's like you have to win there first.
When and package managers help to alleviate some of those things until something like this happened, where LeftPad was removed from NPM. So now you were dependent, when you ran your NPM install, on LeftPad being out there and available to download from NPM, and millions of projects broke because LeftPad was gone.
Yeah, and I like that NuGet hasn't quite fallen over into that micro-package mentality. And I have seen a Node application that had 900 dependencies, and no human can handle it after probably 50. And so no human can handle 900. It's not going to happen. And so the possibility of that application running forever seems very low to me. Because the dependency problem in there is insurmountable. And it's like, how the heck did we do that? And how do we get there? The idea is microservices. So if you're in a world where you have any kind of micro packages, you better have microservices too, because 900 is not going to work.
I want to call that gift out in just a second, but Arts Plunge made a great point too. Exactly what you're talking about. Most of these third-party vendors out there, when they're out of business and there's no customer support, you better have install disks available so that you can manage that. And if it's open source, well, at least you can crack open the source and take a look so that you can support yourself.
Yeah, we used to worry a lot about it, and people haven't gotten as bit as much as we thought they were going to get bit, but now some of these people are trying to keep up really old code bases with companies long out of business, or companies that simply say we just don't support that anymore in any way whatsoever. It's ancient. Yeah.
So let's thank Binary Logics for 5 more subscriptions. Dear Lord,
you guys are awesome.
Seriously,
totally
this
awesome
is going to be a
today.
problem here. So
It's going to be a problem. What problem?
They're spending all my money here.
Oh, you'll be fine with the match.
Yeah, okay.
You seriously need help, give me a call.
Espar1, M. Magano, EA, it looks like EA Johnson 1. Shmuley, you get a free subscription. And Brave Cobra, you get a subscription as well. You get to use the .NET bot everywhere. And you get a subscription. And you get a subscription. And yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't keep the money on that. We will be matching and making kind donations to Girl Develop It. Thank you very much. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Make sure you use those .NET bots. So type C#, capital B, little OT, and you can use that everywhere you want here on Twitch, including the Visual Studio channel. Make sure if you tune in and you catch Kathleen tomorrow, fill that chat room with .NET bots for her. Fill it up. Let her know you saw her here today.
I'll be talking about the CLI and SDK, the .NET Core CLI and SDK, and Global Tools.
Yes, and our friend Seth Juarez will be helping host. Let's freak Seth out with all kinds of .NET bots in the room at that time.
Yeah, bring me good questions too, because I really like that. Yeah.
And so we see here's Janescu 7. Now Janescu tuned in yesterday during the .NET Conf attendee party, and Janescu won a Surface Go.
Really?
Yes, Richard Campbell gave away Surface Go's,
amazing.
and
Yay.
Janescu won one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I saw him hanging out and answering some questions and having a good time in the chat room, and I was so happy to see that one of our viewers won a Surface Go on that stream yesterday. Very cool stuff.
Really good, yeah.
Yes, it's a capital B. Make sure you use that. And everybody gets a little coffee mug icon to show that they're a subscriber here on the channel. So very cool stuff.
Excellent.
Yes, congratulations, Janescu.
Excellent.
So we've got these 3 buckets of these are the types of projects that we're maintaining.
Yeah. And there's probably some space between them, but to me, I like to simplify things down when I'm trying to make a point to management, because they will always make it more complex on their own. I don't have to do that for them. And then say, look, is this application, is this something that you still want this app running in 5 years and running healthy?
Right.
And if you do, it takes constant investment in that.
Yes.
And it takes you having people that can make smart decisions about new technology.
Oh, yeah.
And then roll things with small changes as opposed to having big changes. And it does require that you have some tests in place.
Yeah.
Big changes are hard. You make mistakes.
Small
changes is what you can get away with. And sometimes you do have to sit back and say, look, there's this new thing, that we're going to have to accommodate. And if you didn't, GDPR was that for a lot of people. And so there are things that you're going to say, big thing coming, we're going to have to step back and figure out how we're going to accommodate this. But an awful lot can be broken up into little tiny pieces. And even I suppose GDPR could have been. I mean, it's one set of things, but being able to unsubscribe, that's one thing.
Sure. It starts small. What I think is right when I talk to management, of an organization, and trying to explain, hey, we want to make a couple of little changes to make things better. Making little changes, and they hear that around what they call the mission critical applications, right? Little changes to make something better, they're open to, but making big changes, going from .NET Framework to .NET Core, they see that and go, oh, right? Because they see there's risk, right? The risk there is bigger than those little changes, right?
Right. Well, the thing about that is that, there's a lot of work going on to make the change from .NET Framework to .NET Core not that risky. Certainly, you should look at it from a business perspective of being careful. Okay, you should have tests, you should have a plan. Okay, so I'm not going to say just do it. But we've got the API port in place so people can, before they start writing code, find out that, they're going to be successful.
Sure.
And so you can go out and download the API port tool and find out where you have a problem before you do the first thing. And then with moving more of the, not everything's going to move, but more stuff is going to be moving in .NET Core 3. So there's a constant effort to make that an easy place to be. And so I think that's going to keep on going. I think, big changes are things like, changing your data access technology is a big change. I think that to some degree, and maybe this is what you were thinking, it's a bigger change to go from ASP.NET pre-core to ASP.NET Core. That's a bigger change.
Oh yeah, right. ASP.NET 4.7.
I get into the
4.5, 4.
little .NET Core library world because that's a lot of where my space is. But as you look at some of the big add-on libraries, ASP.NET is beautiful in ASP.NET Core. It's absolutely beautiful piece of work.
Yes.
But it will take you a little bit of work to get there, especially if you've done stuff like with the pipelines and all, and you're doing your own work to rip apart your messages and get it into your object shapes by yourself. If you're doing that work, and I've done that before for good reason. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that your job will be bigger than if you've you'll have to understand the new pipeline, where you may not have to understand the new pipeline otherwise.
Arts Plunge says, I understand the logic of sometimes hanging on to legacy code, but if you're still developing with VB6, run away, run away. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right in that to the things we were saying earlier, right? Security and support for that. You should get moving. Right now, the risk is staying with that technology. So yeah, that's going to be a major change that you need to start considering sooner than later. Like in 1534 says, my work just did a major ERP switchover. So there's big risk, there's something that management really needs to think about. And we went from something built in old Progress code to something that is .NET. Took 4 years. That's a big project.
Did you cut off? I wonder if you cut off the old project, because one of the other things on the big changes like that, those really big transitions, and it's actually a reason to do them in steps, is because if you do a big cutover, then it's really common that there's 1, 2, 6, 10 things that don't work in the new system, and the old system has to stay up, and then you just doubled your space that you have to support. And so that's one of the danger points of, so if you have a big system like that, it might take you 4 years, but if it takes 4 years and it's because we pulled off this piece and we redid that in the new system, and now we pull off the next one and we do that in the next system. Now that takes some pretty thoughtful architecture to avoid having a big mess in the back end. I mean the database, so yes. The real back end. So if your database has to be the old database and then you later cut over, okay, but let's just put enough shims in there that process is going to go okay.
Okay, yeah. Smaller PRs take a longer time. Yes, if you were to do that with lots of little changes, it would take weeks. Absolutely. Smaller PRs do take a little bit longer to get things done.
It's kind of a risk and a safety thing, I think.
Trying to figure out how ASP.NET Core Lifecycle relates to .NET Core Lifecycle. This is Space Shot. That's our friend Chris Gomez. I've got a team that is trying to figure out if they stay on ASP.NET Core 2.0 on .NET Framework, but I think they might have to move along to .NET Core 2.0.
So a couple of things on that. First of all, if you go look at .NET Core 2.1, that's what we're on right now. 2.2 is in progress and 3.0 is in progress right now. We have those running in parallel in progress. So if you go, when you make the jump, make the biggest leapfrog you can, and as long as it's just something stable. And on .NET Core, then anything prior to 2.0, you're limited in the APIs you have available. For API visibility, 2.0 to 2.1 is not quite as big of a jump, but 2.1 is actually a really sweet piece of work. So it's a great place for people to land.
I kind of agree. It is 2.1 is very nice.
And yeah, so I don't know what's driving that change. I do think that it's this bucket thing. If it's in that bucket where you want it to work in 5 years and it's a long-term investment by the company, then I think that at some point you're gonna want to have the new stuff, and that's going to be on .NET Core. I mean, ASP.NET Core is faster. It's fast on .NET Core. Ben Adams had worked on our Tech and Power benchmarks, and those run C# and Visual Basic are right up there at the top. So they're super fast. And so, forget anything fancy like you're actually using SPAN or something else, but just the core Kestrel operations that go on .NET Core. Everything's tuned around that. And so it's going to be, that's where you're going to get the goodies in the future. So if you're in that bucket, if you're in a bucket where, yeah, this doesn't ever change, then why make the investment unless you truly have a problem that's going to be addressed by the new stuff?
Absolutely. So I think we can take a shot at a couple of these. I'm just going to turn down Steve a little bit there. Steve's a little bit loud.
Steve's a little bit loud. Yeah, we got so many people. That's so awesome. It's great.
Fantastic.
So many subscriptions. He's been really losing his voice.
He's getting a little tired over there, you know.
Yeah.
It's working up a sweat.
Yeah.
So I'm just off to the side here working on tuning Mr. Balmer as it is.
I don't remember when ASP.NET goes out of support, by the way. And
you know who would know?
Scott!
I'm sorry, I had to do that.
All right.
Let me see. There he is. There's Steve. Actually, I've got him really, really quiet already.
I've lost track of what Space Shuttle is saying they don't see. I'm sorry on that.
That should help a little bit.
All right.
Oh, look, my browser refreshed the embedded chat. That's weird. I could use that do it sound effect. Yes, I've got the do it.
Yeah.
So, I did Perl in my last year of school.
Perl and PHP.
So I did Silence is Golden, yeah. Last week, I tried the Peach Pie project. So this is...
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Right. It compiles PHP to .NET code, and it'll run on Kestrel. So I downloaded my blog that runs on WordPress, and I recompiled it with Peach Pie, and I got it working on Kestrel. Now I have it running locally, and I still have a little bit more tuning to do on it. I got to get my images working and all that. Yeah. But I'm just about at a point where I'm ready to deploy it and make it work, right? Deploy it, put it back on Azure as a .NET application, not as PHP.
Fascinating, but you still have to maintain it in PHP.
Yes, so whenever there's an update to WordPress, I need to update WordPress, recompile with .NET, and deploy. But that's a good thing because now one of the common attacks you see against WordPress is people will figure out how to, and they'll use one of the back doors that are so prevalent in WordPress because of the different plugins and things. Right. They'll upload a PHP script that hijacks things. Well, if you're uploading a PHP script into something that's compiled in .NET and it's hiding away in a DLL, it doesn't know how to interpret a .php file.
All right.
So you end up being a little bit more secure by default.
Oh, that's great. That sounds good.
So let's take a look at some of these a little bit smaller pull requests while we've got a few minutes here.
Let's either do that or look at your global tool.
Do what?
Do you have a global tool?
I do have a global tool.
We could either look at pull requests or we could look at your global tool.
Let's take a look at these two pull requests real quick. There's one from our friend Scott Addy on the Docs team, and I've got another one here from Brave Cobra, who's right there in the chat room.
All right, good.
And it's just they look like they're just a couple of configuration file changes. Good. So this one says fixed email notifications URL configuration. The notification configuration got refactored, had an abstraction package introduced. However, notification service also needs to know what the URL is in order to provide links in the email messages. So here's the thing. This project it's a wiki, and it will send out emails when people put comments on articles that you write.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, hey, Kathleen, there was, Jeff commented on this. You may want to go check it out. So what we're looking at here is you need to actually tell the notification service, here's the URL of the website to go back to.
Oh, okay. Got it. Sure. So you know exactly what it is the email's all about.
Right.
Okay, that's helpful.
So it looks like he removed the URL from our email notifications configuration here.
Okay.
The URL is coming into the notification service and being stored. Okay. Looking down a little further, and so we had app settings URL. So he's now pulling it from this field, looking. I'm trying to see where is it actually coming from, that URL. So this looks like a bunch of This is a white space change.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, ick.
So there's a feature here we can hide those white space changes.
All right.
So now send forgot password, and it's doing that, including the URL. Okay. A base URL. Okay. Where is that URL coming from? So add scoped, so this is configuring notification services, and it's passing configuration get section URL value. So that URL, I'm looking for where it is. So where are we pulling that URL from, Brave Cobra? It should be in app settings somewhere. Let's take a look-see.
And I'm having a really hard time seeing that, so
you want to jump on?
I'm just gonna pull it up on my screen.
Sure.
Too.
So
what's the URL?
The URL was okay. We're going to github.com/C#Fritz/core-wiki.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to hit the issues tab in there.
Okay, great.
Pull request tab.
Yep. Okay. Got it. I'm just going to do it this way, so we just.
There you go. So it's the second. Yep, that one.
That one. Yeah. Okay.
So it's passing
I'll just
along,
have it up here
and
then,
it turns into a base URL in the notification. Is what we're seeing a little bit further down, which feels like the right thing to do. I'm just wondering how broken it was. You know. Right, you're passing the URL directly instead of the app settings. App settings is for the UI. Okay. So this is interesting. It's a great point he's making in the chat room.
And thanks for being here. Awesome.
Yes, and thank you for hanging out. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, yeah, helping us out here.
So notifications is in its own project, right? So in order to keep the architecture a little bit clean and separated, the application settings is a web project thing. The notifications is sitting in another project. It could move off to some other service.
Right.
Into another, other memory space. So by separating this a little bit, it allows us to just pass the string for that URL when we go and separate it out later.
That makes sense.
Makes sense. So this I'm pretty comfortable merging directly right here on GitHub.
All right then.
I like it. So we've had a couple new followers join us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think that actually puts us over 3,700. Is that going to tick over 3,700 on the followers? So I'm going to squash and merge here and let that go in. There it goes. So thanks for the contribution and making our application more maintainable. Cool. All right.
So what happens to that white space there? The white space change when you
it applies it.
It applies to new white space.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the last one we wanted to look at today, I think, is going to be this one from our friend Scott Addy.
All right.
Simplified libman JSON. So libman JSON, right? This is the new library manager that was introduced as part of ASP.NET Core. I think it was 2.1. There's the 3,700. There, it ticked over.
Yay!
Fantastic. Thank you.
You did that. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah.
Closer and closer to dying the soup catcher here. So Library Manager gives us a way to interact with those different repositories out there that have static code, JavaScript, CSS, those static HTML resources. Right. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, the problem is trying to solve is we want to remove that dependency on Node.js, right? So that you don't have to install Node.js and then install .NET. Be able to reference and use that npm.js repository directly, right? Use that registry, that's the word I'm thinking of, so that I don't have to have 3-4 tools installed just to manage and doing some of this thing, some of these management things. So looks like we had a couple extra properties in here. Libman JSON defines a default provider property of CDN.js. So CDN.js, that's the content delivery network that the JavaScript sits on.
I think you can live with this one.
I think I can.
Now that you've got it understood, look at the file, and you're like,
yeah, default provider is the CDN, and
what he's saying is it's already CDN.js. Why are you saying it?
Don't need to duplicate
Let's get rid of that. Yeah.
So
this is a sweet, small, easy, love it. not every PR can possibly be like this, but when it is, it's just like, good idea.
Do it.
Yeah, this is what keeps code alive. This is what keeps legacy code alive, is getting the little stuff like this fixed.
Yes, and it makes management of it later easier. Just thank you for the contribution. I don't need to say more than that. Fantastic. And then we should see the little score ticker up top update with some of those new folks getting updated. I made a Twitch account just for this channel, says NVNBot. Love the series, especially that 8-hour ASP.NET video. Oh, thank you, NVNBot. So, yeah, we did gosh, that was back in, I think it was
a couple months ago.
Oh, gosh. Well, that was March or something like that.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, that was. So that one had, we had John Galloway, we had Shane Boyer, and our friend Julie Lerman. Of course, we got to talk about Entity Framework. Got to bring in Julie. And we did 8 hours talking about all the cool things. We did effectively some of the ASP.NET Core workshops you see us deliver at other events. We simplified it and formatted it for Twitch. Of course, it's more hands-on when you're in person. You can do those interactions. But thank you so much, NVNBot. I'm glad you enjoyed that video. And thank you for joining us. Now, that number was 3701 just a minute ago, and it went down to 0.
It did. Yeah, somebody left. Does
guess.
That happen?
Why would you leave us? Now I feel bad.
Yeah.
So, yes, I've done a number of 8-hour workshops, and we have one coming up on Monday. So we did this announcement this week. Microsoft did this announcement on Monday about Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
So, right, VSTS is now Azure DevOps, and we've broken things out into separate services, and it's easier for open source projects to get involved and use DevOps.
Right.
So, Monday, we're going to be doing 8-hour workshop. 6-hour workshop is all it's going to be because it's just that easy. We only need 2 less hours.
All right, good. That sounds great. Who are you doing it with?
Donovan Brown.
Oh, good. He's
Oren
awesome.
Novotny.
Oh, no.
Yes.
All right. That's a scary group.
Abel Wang.
Okay.
And there's 2 or 3 other people that are joining from the product team. It's going to be great. We're really looking forward to it. Absolutely. Follow the Visual Studio channel. That's where we'll be doing that workshop because that is a Microsoft workshop. So we will be doing it on the Visual Studio channel, but I will simulcast it here on my channel as well. So if you tune in here, like you might get an alert on Monday about, you'll see it, and you can jump over to the Visual Studio channel so you can ask some of those great personalities questions, just like you're doing here with Kathleen. So I need to come visit New Jersey. Okay, no problem. I can do that. I actually do DevOps differently now and don't touch what was announced on Monday. If that's what works for you, great, Janescu. So it's all about making options available to folks.
Right.
So we have about 20 minutes until .NET Conf starts.
We're going to have to get out of here before too long.
Yeah. So .NET Conf is going to start. We're going to be streaming it to the Visual Studio channel, both here on Twitch. It'll be over on Mixer. It's on Channel 9, bunch of different places. I hope you tune in for it. It's going to be great. But then at 5 o'clock today, 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern, and what is that, like midnight UTC, I think? We're going to cut over to Community Day. And we go 24 hours around the world, every time zone, every continent is represented, except for Antarctica.
That's sad that
I tried really hard to get Antarctica.
I'm going next. I'm working on they're going to ship me down there for next year, and I'll just do it from there myself.
Yes, and you better dress warm, otherwise you're going to look like Han Solo frozen in carbonite. I even tried to get somebody from the space station to speak, but it was lonely on Mixer yesterday. It was. We didn't have too many people watching on Mixer yesterday, but we are supporting Mixer on .NET Conf. But 24 hours. 24 hours. Folks will be watching. They'll be speaking from this room, and they'll be watching the chat room here on Twitch, on Mixer, and be able to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
And there's hosts here in Redmond. They're going to stay up all night.
Yes, we will be up all night. Javier will be here. You saw Jamie Singleton. She'll be helping out. Beth Massey will be helping out. I'll be here at 2 in the morning Pacific time is when I come in. Imo Landworth will be here. James Montemagno will be here. Seth Juarez. We've got an amazing group of hosts that are coming back, and some great speakers, including Kathleen.
Not at 2 in the morning.
Not at 2 in the morning. No,
You've
you've got 4 in the afternoon, so you've got plenty of time to sleep. Me, not so much. Fortunately, we've got plenty of coffee.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Good.
So I think we should wrap it up here.
All right.
So we can get ready for .NET Conf. Join us back on the Visual Studio channel if you want to continue hanging out here on Twitch, or you can go over to, and during the day, they won't be watching the Twitch chat. They will be watching the chat over on Channel 9, is where you're going to see them answering questions. So thank you so much. This video will archive. It'll be over on YouTube a little bit later today. And I'll be syndicating back over here .NET Conf when it starts in about 15, 20 minutes.
All right.
Cool. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Tomorrow I won't be broadcasting. I'll be back on Saturday, all right? See you then.